Among many problems that you see in the world today, many are caused by us, human beings, and many solutions are provided by us. We are the cause of many of our problems, but we have also been a great contributor of many solutions, not just to us, but to other creations that surround us. Our problems are caused by different reasons. Some of the reason is because we need what we seek to get. The other problems are caused by the need of probably more than what we need, perhaps also due to greedy. You have people who want to own almost everything for themselves. All these can create a problem. The world is no longer bigger like it used to be. A problem in one country will have a really huge impact in the other country. You can see an example of COVID. Nobody knew COVID was going to be a global pandemic. Once it was in China, nobody thought COVID was going to spread around the world. And it's not just COVID. There are many other problems that we have seen within our world today, such as climate change. You have those who believe that as a human being, we are part of the cause of the climate change, and we have those who don't believe it. And perhaps those who don't believe it may fall into that greedy. If there is their benefit, then sometimes people will fail to acknowledge the problem. On the other hand, we have been the solution of many problems because of our capacity of thinking beyond the line. We always want to improve our way of life. We always seek for solutions even where there is not a problem. Our curiosity has helped us to overcome many challenges, but has also contributed to many problems that we see in the world today. The world is a very beautiful place, like I've always said, where people can live happily, where people can live in harmony with every other living creations, and these depend on how we treat one another. The way we treat one another, the way we interpret things, the way we understand the things, the way we look at others have always been a huge contributor to our problems or solutions. When we come together as a collection, we are often able to overcome any challenge that might come in our lives. But when we distance ourselves from the other, it doesn't matter whether you are rich, you are poor, it becomes difficult. That shows how we depend to one another. The poor need the rich need the poor. We need the nature. We need the animals around us. We need water around us. We need rivers. We need oceans. We need good weather. We need. And all those other creations also need these things as we need them. You see, since the creation of our time, human beings have always moved from one place to the other. If you look back, our ancestors have moved from one village to the other, one side of the country to the other, to seek opportunities of life. This is in our nature. In this sense, you can come to understand that we always seek for opportunity. We are the people who always seek for better. We always want to improve our lives, just like I said, and we always also seek for much more than that. In order to have a solution, you need a problem, and every problem can have a solution. What may be different is the way you are looking at the problem. People can look at a problem differently depending on whether they are being honest to themselves, depending on their need, their interest. All these can have an impact. The outcome is determined by how you are going to tackle the problem. Sometimes what seems to be a problem often is not a problem. We leave the problem and we get into other things, then we lose ourselves into these things for different reasons. One, because we don't want to face the truth. We don't want to be taken accountable for what we have done or what is happening, or we don't want to be seen as we are the low-minded one. The other people are higher than us. The other person is above us. And all these often have an impact and can push us to take a solution that is also not a solution. We might end up holding a solution, but something that is not a solution. Something that could be just to please us. Something that is just to cover what is happening. Something that we will choose or we will decide to go with just because of our own interests, our own greedy, and so on. This is what has caused many problems around the world today. There are problems that are naturally world problems, and we know that. But here we are talking about the problems that we have caused, or the problem that have come in place due to our existence. And with the capacity that we have, like I said, we are able to overcome any challenges if we come together. But the reality is sometimes we want to do things by ourselves. We want to divide ourselves. We want to have small groups where we can be higher than the other so that the other people can adore or worship us. Good versus evil, poor versus rich, middle class, and so on. Today, we are once again going to talk about one of the biggest problems in our world today. Among many problems that we have faced, we have also faced the problem of migration. Remember what I said? Naturally, we are people who often move from one place to the other. However, in this conversation, our focus is not going to focus on migration, but is going to focus on the so-called illegal migration or illegal migrant. I say so-called because this is not a term that is agreed by many. Those who see migration as a beautiful thing, as something that we do naturally, do not agree with this term illegal. They will use different terms that I am going to mention within this conversation when I start to unpack the meaning behind this wonderful topic. So the idea here is to provide the best solution to tackle the so-called illegal migration in the world today. One of the questions we are going to ask is the so-called illegal migration really a problem? Or we fail to see the problem and we see the so-called illegal migration as a problem. So in order to provide the solutions to tackle illegal migrations that we're seeing today, mostly in Europe and in US particularly, we will have to understand first what is migration. So this topic or this conversation will be divided into two areas. The first area is an area where I will give some basic explanation about different terms surrounding the term migrant or migration. Perhaps some of the meaning of these terms could be certain things that you already know, but there is a reason why before diving into difficult things, we have to start with the basic in order to have a better understanding and all of us to grow into this conversation, because we don't all have the same knowledge on every topic. This problem is being seen as one of the biggest problems in this century, and it seems like almost impossible or difficult for many educated people with money, people with power to actually solve this problem. Is this problem really difficult like it is, or like people making it to be? Or is there a lack of understanding, or there is misunderstanding, or people ignore the truth and focus on something else? That's what we are going to look at today. Hello, my name is Balos Ezrak, and I am so pleased that you have taken some time to listen to this podcast. I don't know whether this is the first time you are listening to this voice or to our podcast, or I don't know whether you have been here before. If you have been here before, welcome back. There's more to come. And if this is the first time you are here, then I will also say welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you won't be disappointed with the discussion that we are going to have. Follow along. I want you to engage with me while I'm talking. It will be nice to be somewhere quiet so that you can follow words by words as I go through this topic. It is a very wonderful topic, and wonderful when we are talking about problems that surround us. It is always great. There is nothing beautiful like tackling a problem or providing the solution. You know, we are always quick to criticize, to blame, to say this and that and that. No, what we need is some form of solutions, how we can tackle these problems. And that is exactly what we are going to do after the introduction. So before diving into this beautiful conversation, I will allow you to first of all listen to our introduction about Andunda Tree, what we do here, how you can get involved, and then when you have an understanding of what we do here, what we are or why we are presenting this podcast, then you have an idea where we're going with this. Because without understanding what is Andunda Tree and what we do here, again, your mind can only jump into a conclusion without understanding the actual purpose of this podcast. I'll see you after the introduction. See you on the other side. See you after the introduction. Andunda Tree is a platform that aims to educate people about common sense. We came to understand that in our society today, common sense is no longer common. Things that we used to feel to be normal in our lives don't seem to be that way anymore. And things that we used to all shake our head for that didn't seem to be normal are things that are becoming normal. Bad agendas are in place. This is the reason why we decided to come with the idea of the school of common sense. You can call us a school of wisdom, or a school of life, or a school of moral. All these represent what we do here. If you look in the society that we live in today, our society is kind of broken. Why? Because those in power, those with money, have taken the decision to place their agendas based on how they feel, what they want, what they think, while the rest of us have become to be the followers. Somebody can just wake up the next day and start pushing for something because they have the power to do so. They implement that. The rest of us, we start following them. They use the power they have. They use the money they have. They use the influence that they have. And this has contributed to destroy our society. Marriages are broken. Families are broken. Education, school is broken. Parenting is broken. Religion is broken. Humanity is broken. Almost everything is not heading to the right place. And we believe that the lack of common sense has contributed to these matters. It means that those who put agendas on our society are not using their common sense to see what is beneficial, what is important for all of us. And those who are followers, ordinary citizens of countries, are not using their common sense to refuse anything that is put in place that is not good or that is wrong. We just become so easy to follow things. We have become a weak society. We have become weak people. We all intending to do the most simplest things. People are no longer wish to think as they used to think. We can still resolve the problems that we are facing in our everyday life today, whether it's climate change, whether it's poverty, whether it's economic in general, whether it's war and the conflict, whether it's migrations problem. All these problems and issues require each one of us to use common sense in decisions making. We are here to exchange thoughts that will allow us to think better and make better decisions in our lives. We are a school of life. Therefore, we discuss matters that take place in our everyday life that people tend to ignore, people don't want to talk about, but yet they are very important. at School of Common Sense is basic. We simplify things. We try to educate one another in a very simple ways to allow even those who did not go to university, to college, to understand what is going on, to understand not what they want, but what they need to understand. Our encouragement to you is to make sure that you don't just take everything you hear and conclude from there. No, just think about it. Not everything you see is what it is. Not everything you hear is what was said. We are here to actually give you some form of thought for you to pause and think, whether you're reading a book, whether you are listening to music, you are listening something on the radio, you are walking on the street and you hear somebody say something. Always try to think before you jump into a conclusion on every matter. So that is what Under the Tree is about. Hello once again. I'm sure you already listened to the introduction. You already have an idea what Under the Tree is all about and what we do here. After you listen to that introduction, I'm sure you will now have a picture of the kind of topic and the conversation we are going to have time to time on this podcast of Under the Tree. Whether you are listening to me or whether you are listening to somebody else, the aim and the purpose here is to improve one another in the way we think. Today, like I said, we are going to provide the best solutions to tackle the so-called illegal migrations in the world today. But before doing that, we have first to understand this term migration. I am going to break it down in a simple and a basic way. If you want to understand more, you can always email us, or you can just go on YouTube. There will be other videos there, or there might be other resources that may be able to give you more explanation. Now, let's first understand the term migration. In a simple definition, migration is a movement of people or animals moving from their place of origin to a different area. When we talk about animals, you have different animals or birds that move in a particular time of the year from one side of the country to a different side of the country. After that time of the year pass, whether it's within 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, those birds will return back home. There are birds and animals that does this every year. In today's conversation, we are going to focus on us, people, human beings, the most precious creatures. Some of the terms that we are going to discuss here do not apply to the other creations, other creatures such as the bird or the animals. So who is a migrant is somebody who leaves his place of origin to go to a different area of the country, different country or different continent. And this movement, in this simple definition, does not limit how long you are going to stay there and how you went there. What is the reason behind why you went and live in a different city within your country, or why you decided to go to a different country. But here we give you different important terms that you should know, because there seems to be a lot of confusions when it comes to this idea of migration. You hear people referring to migrant like an insult. People who are in your country is a migrant, or is an immigrant, or is this. People will use different terms. This idea of being a migrant appears to be seen as a negative thing. But the question, is this a negative thing? Who moves? That's the question. Who never moved? Were you born in one particular place and live there all your life? The answer could be yes. Can you refer yourself as a migrant? Perhaps yes. If your parent, your grandparent, your grand-grandparent came from somewhere to live where you are living now, you could also be referred as a migrant, because you are not originally from there. You came from somewhere else. People move for different reasons, and there is not a good or bad migrant in a sense, because people move for different reasons and for different causes. People just move depending on what is happening to where they are and what is happening to where they are going. Within this term migration, you have internal migration and international migration, which is something that I already explained. Internal, just like the word or the term says, is basically migrating yourself from a village to a city in your country. How many of us have have left our villages to live in a wonderful city somewhere in our country. A lot of big cities, many people live there. They have come from somewhere else to live there. They have established their lives there. That person is a migrant. International migration or international migrant is also somebody who moved across the border. It means that you leave the country of origin, you go to a different country, to another country, to another country. As soon as you leave the border of your country to get into a different country, that's where you can be seen as an international migrant. So that's what just basically means. Within the same term, there is what we call voluntary and involuntary migration. Voluntary, just like the term says, is somebody who volunteers to do something. You desire to go somewhere. And involuntary, on the other hand, is when you move because of a particular issue, a different challenge, whether this is economic, this is due to safety, this is due to disaster that have taken place. This will force you to move from this area to go to a different area. It is also important to understand immigrant, an immigrant and emigrant. Emigrant with the E is basically the place you are living to go somewhere else. We can say emigrated from Australia and is now an immigrant in Canada. So when you get there, you become an immigrant. But where you coming from, you have emigrated from that country and immigrated yourself in the other country and become an immigrant there. That also is other terms that can bring confusion with these terms. You know, when we are talking about them, we don't tend to pay attention or understand this as well. Now I'm going to explain to you some of the reason why you end up migrating. You may migrate as a student. Let's say you emigrate from Tanzania to the Republic Democratic of Congo to study there for a couple of years. You will still be classified as a migrant, right? You can also make this movement to seek jobs opportunities. Some people think an immigrant is just somebody who's useless, somebody who has no skills, somebody who had a very low life in their country. They have nothing to eat. That's not the case. The footballers that you see in your country today, they are in this group. And these are some of the most richest people on our planet. Are you getting there? You do. You also have asylum seekers, which is somebody also or people who actually requesting to be granted the permission to live in a different country. This could be because of political or safety, and they are waiting to be accepted to live in that country. So they are like people who are on a waiting list. Sometimes you will find these people within the country already, but that means their application is still in the process. But in reality, you're supposed to be outside of the country and apply and then wait for you to be granted refugee status or any other status. And then you have a refugee, which on the other hand, I can use the term who is forced to move from the place of origin to the other place or to the other country. This normally because of the conflict, disasters that have taken place, such as fire. So a country where that person is going or within the country, they could be provided with a refugee status. All these terms such as refugee, asylum seeker, all these terms have different ways you can look at them. Different scholars, different groups and organizations have different definitions, and the different countries have different ways of looking at them. But one way that we are all bound together is under UN, where a lot of countries agreed to this movement of people, and how long you are going to stay there depend on you and the country where you are going. This can be temporary or permanent. Again, we depend on the country that is giving you this opportunity or this permission to live in their country. You can be there for a period of time. How long is temporary also depend on the country. The UN definition or the way they look at this is also different comparing to how certain countries look at this. All these terms that I have just explained fell into these one word that you hear every day: a migrant, a migrant. It doesn't matter how much money you have, whether you are a billionaire, you are a millionaire, you have a power, you are so-called a white person, black person or brown person or whatever, you fell into this group. However, what you come to see is that certain people or certain group usually try to get some privilege to say, okay, when they move, they are not migrants. And then when the other people move, they are migrants, they are illegal migrants, they are refugees. And then when they move to a particular area, they are now so-called different names. That is just the stupidity way of whatever they want to brand themselves into. But the idea and the agreement of, migrating is that movement that you make once you decided to go and live to a different country. Straight away, you fell into this idea of being a migrant. So from this moment, I would like you to pause for a minute and see whether you're still seeing a migrant as negative, perhaps as you were looking at it, or you start to change the way you see or the way you understand this word. Have you moved yourself somewhere recently? Are you living in a different city? Are you living in a different country? Are you in a different continent? Are you working somewhere else where you are not originally from there? Is migrating a negative thing, or is it a positive thing? That is something else then we can move to talk about. Now, let's see some of the beauty of being a migrant. You imagine you leave your country, you leave your village, you leave your city, and you found yourself in a different city. You found yourself in a different country. You are working there, or you went to school. Perhaps where you were living, there was not a university there. That means you have to go to study somewhere else. Think about that for a minute. You don't have a university. You don't have a proper high school where you are. If there was not this idea of all of us having the opportunity to go somewhere else, do you think you would have had the opportunity to have a degree that you have today, or attend the beautiful school or college or university that you are aiming to go to? Or if you have always looked at this as negative, are you still seeing it as negative? And if yes, then you don't have to make that movement. You have to live just where you are now the rest of your life. And if you're still quite young, you still have a long way to go, then I'm sure you're going to shake your head. So now you are studying somewhere else, you earn a degree, perhaps you found a job there, or you end up going somewhere else. You become a doctor in that country. There is a contribution that comes with that. Yourself, you have benefited from this opportunity put in place, because many countries have opened doors to allow people to come in their countries. And not just that you are making money, you are also contributing to the economy of that country, because first of all, you are paying tax in that country. Secondly, the job that you are doing, you are supporting people there. If you are a doctor, you are treating people there. You see the benefit that comes with that. People are benefiting from your presence. Now, where you came from, you are also providing some benefit, because even though you're in a different country, you have not forgotten where you come from. Somebody once said, someone who forgets where he comes from is a slave. So in that sense, since you are not one, what you tend to do is you have left the people behind. You end up start supporting people who you left behind. Sending money, sending other resources, starting a business there, advising people. Share your experience with the other people left behind. How wonderful that is. Just from one movement for one particular person, or that the entire family can see change within their lives. Even though they will no longer have ways to go with their lives, now that one person who has just moved, providing an opportunity, not just to his or her family, but it could be also to the entire area. Remember what I just said with footballers. Today, a football player can leave a very poor area in Asia, and they will come, let's say, to Europe, play football in one of the biggest teams around the world. That's not Liverpool, Manchester United, Barcelona, and so on. These guys, they're on a lot of money. They do a lot of projects in their country if they have the brain to do so, and they can change the lives of the people they left behind. How can you not appreciate this? How can you not see beauty within this movement? I'm sure you get the beauty that comes with people migrating or migrant. But remember what we said, in the term of migrating, there is not legal or illegal. We all just migrants. But how you get to a country, that is something else. But now, let's first understand some of the challenges that many people who are forced to leave their countries experience. Because now we are about to get into looking at this idea of so-called illegal migration, where we can provide these beautiful solutions. And before we provide these solutions, it will be necessary and important to understand first when people are forced to move to a different country. It means that when people don't have the full choice to move, because one of the reasons why many people you see as migrants or illegal migrants are putting their lives on the boats and without worrying whether they will die or not, there are reasons behind this movement. And the majority of these migrants are economic seekers. They are pushed out in their country because of economic reasons. I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying almost or the majority of the people you see come through this route, most of them, they say they have left the country because they need to seek a better life somewhere else. It means that where they are coming from, there is not jobs or there is other problems. And these problems are the one that we are going to look at, because this is where many people turn a blind eye or they close their eyes and not wish to see the problems that exist that create this so-called large movement of illegal migration or a large movement of migration in Europe and in many so-called developed countries in the world today. One of the biggest problems is the conflict and the wars. Many people who are coming from, let's say, African countries, the Middle East, a lot of people you will see migrating or taking these difficult routes where they put their lives in danger are people running from the conflict, or there are people coming from a country that has been under conflict. Either the conflict has finished or there's just an ongoing conflict. And what you come to understand is that a lot of so-called poor countries, if they have any form of resources that the world need, you're more likely to see these countries in a conflict or in wars. Coincidence, yeah? So you might ask yourself why. This is what I am going to explain to you. So who caused the war? Where does the war and conflict come from? In order to have wars, you need guns. War need money in order to take place. To buy guns, to buy military equipment. This war takes place in a very long time. Could be 3-4 years. There's millions of money that need to be spent. So you imagine a so-called poor country such as, what country can I name? Rwanda, for example, going into a war for 5-6 years, where the majority of the population are struggling economically. The government and its institutions is not strong in terms of economic. Where will this country get the money to actually conduct a war for many years? Where will these equipment come from? They have to come from somewhere, and those with money, those with the power have to send it. What you come to understand is that a lot of conflict within so-called poor or developing countries are created or caused by the powerful countries, powerful organizations, powerful people with a lot of money able to go into these countries and they start a conflict somewhere there. By starting this conflict in that country, guns will be sold. They will sell their guns. If there is not a conflict within the country, according to them, they won't sell their guns every day. They want people to buy their guns day in, day out. Which country is gonna buy guns every day if it's not in a conflict, right? This is a large business that is taking place and has been taking place in our world for many years. So the war became one of the biggest business that you ever imagine. A conflict will be started somewhere. People will be killed, people raped, people will go through very difficult time. But those with money, for them, it doesn't matter. It's just a business. And it's not just that they will sell guns. There is also an opportunity for them to reverse the power. If somebody who's in power is somebody they don't control, it's not a puppet, then they will create rebels, terrorist group somewhere. They will found that, and that government will be attacked, go under conflict. The government will do two things. Is either the government will be forced to leave the power, or the government will be forced to go back to the same master, the same powerful nation, the same powerful organization, the same powerful individual people with money and with the power, and beg them to stop these wars and sign difficult agreement where this country, this powerful organization will be collecting money day in, day out within these so-called poor countries. The country that they are referring referring as very poor countries, but they will still continue taking money and any other resources that country might have day in, day out. That government will be forced to start even paying money to these powerful organizations and individual people. Sometimes they will come to help. They will come as the assistant. Sometimes what usually happens is they will start a conflict somewhere, and then what they will do is they are behind those who are starting the conflict, the rebel, the terrorist, but at the same time they will be acting like they are supporting the government in place. It's a game. You've seen it where these powerful organizations, institutions and countries where they will support the opposition, at the same time they will be acting as partners with the government in place. It means that whichever way, they are just only looking for their benefit, their gain. It's all about them. They don't give a damn about the people who are struggling, who are being raped every day. They can come and talk about democracy or human rights, you name it. And when these conflicts take place, these people will be forced to go somewhere. They will become refugees. They will become migrants. They have to run to allocate themselves somewhere else, and they leave almost everything. These are the people who are already struggling. They will be forced to go somewhere else. And whether the war will finish, by the time they return, there won't be anything there. So it's the poverty over poverty. Or you were poor, now your life has been dashed deep down under the soil. You have no chance to stand up. This is one of the biggest cause of many illegal migration, or a lot of illegal migrants or migrants leave their countries, particularly those who are being forced to leave the country, and also particularly those from these so-called developing or poor countries. Sometimes I try not to use these terms because I don't really agree with this idea of looking at these countries as poor countries. Because if you look deep, it could be the other way around. But for the sake of the understanding, I'm sure you understand better what I'm saying. I don't want to get you into another topic. This is a topic for another day. So you can see the problem that war can cause. People will be killed and will be forced to go somewhere else. That is one of the problems. The second problem I will present is disasters. According to many scientists, a lot of problems that comes with the climate change that we see today is man-made, meaning that the activities that we are doing contributing to cause the flood, the fire, drought that you see around the world. Remember what I said, a problem can be caused somewhere, but the outcome can end up somewhere else. So you come to understand that the same powerful countries, developed countries, are the ones that have big industries, are the biggest contributor of these problems. And the problems they are creating to the world is having an impact to the countries where people are struggling already more than anything. So imagine if the fire that you saw in Australia a couple of years ago was in a country that is on its knee. You'd imagine that would be very difficult for that country to survive. Again, people will be forced to migrate somewhere, to become refugees somewhere, and in order for them to survive, they will have to go somewhere else where they can start life there. You see that problem again? The cause is made or contributed mainly by those who are doing well, but the outcome face those who are struggling already. And don't take me wrong, developed countries experience these problems. You see this in US, like I just mentioned, fire in Australia. You see events around the world in very powerful countries. But there's a difference between these countries and the so-called developing or poor countries. Because the developed countries have resources, they are able to overcome these situations. They are able to overcome these challenges, not just by themselves, but they also have partners who also have the means. That's why you see people with money associate with people with money. People with power, they associate with people with power. And when they combine, they are more powerful. You've seen it with world organizations that have come together, NATO, the G7, the G20, whatever, you name it. These are powerful countries or institutions that are already powerful, but then they come together to be much powerful. And the reason for that is to continue to dominate the rest of the world. So the people will be forced again to leave their countries because of these disasters that are happening in their countries to go somewhere. Even if they return back, by the time they return back home, there won't be anything left. These people will be forced to start again from the scratch. A government is already struggling. They can't provide for these people. This is another disease. I've mentioned the war. Now is the disaster that you see year in, year out within these countries. I will take you to the third problem and we will provide for the solutions. These problems that I just mentioned create economic hardship, not just for individual people within the country, but for institutions within that country and for the government as a whole that is already struggling to provide for its people. This government, when these things happen, will be forced to take a debt again in order to try to repair what has been damaged, I would say. So the government will be forced to go and borrow money somewhere else to the same powerful country, powerful organization, and this debt comes with a lot to pay back. That's why you see many countries have borrowed money and never have a way to pay them back. Many so-called poor countries have been in debt for many years, but they continue to get more and more. I'm not saying developed countries do not have debt. So what you come to understand is that there is a problem what I just mentioned there. Many so-called poor countries have debt that they have had for many years and they are forced to pay this debt time to time. It's like the little resources they are getting, they are giving it back. Everything they get, it goes straight away somewhere else. And then you have an idea of where there is a business. This is another problem. The business that takes place between developed countries and non-developed countries, there's one thing that takes place. People within developed countries, they are the one who have to make the price. It means that something that can be sold in UK for £100 will be bought in Zambia for £10. You see the difference? Within these, you come to understand that an employee who's being paid $10 in the US per hour, that $10 is the wage for a full day of an employee working in India for the same company. Are you getting this? So you imagine somebody's coming to buy something from you and that person has to determine how much you should sell it to them. And if you don't sell it to them, they have the power, they control the market, they won't buy it. And if they won't buy it, they will use the power they have to influence other people or other so-called partners that they already have in place surrounding them not to buy this product. You can see the idea there is not to help this country. For many years, developed countries have always stood as the helper. They are going to help Africa. They want to help country in Asia. They want to help country in Middle East. Now, this is the way they helped these countries. It's like you take 1,000 and you helped $2, and with that $2, you have a conditions either to return it with the profit, because so many called aid that many poor countries receive is not usually aid. It comes with other conditions behind it. Comes with other agreements where a country again is forced to return this money or is forced to give back resources and so on. For years, this has just been the ongoing problem that we have had. To poor countries, it's a problem, and to developed countries, it's a business as usual. These countries will be forced day in, day out to become poor and poor. There is not a country that can prosper within that nature. So the idea is to continue making these countries poor. That's why you hear the term, the poor remain poor and rich people get richer. As you can see, when COVID took place, many businesses that provide vaccine, they became much rich and more. This is a difficult times where people are struggling, but they made some of the biggest profits you can ever imagine. So this is why I said from the beginning that there's a selfishness. So a lot of people gain from the loss of somebody. This is what usually happens. Now, when these countries, all these things are happening, this is where you hear many of these so-called developing or poor countries talking about this idea, particularly countries in Africa and many islands. They talk about this idea of gain, meaning that we do business where we are the seller, we make the price and you buy it to the price that we ask you to buy our product for. In this sense, it will allow us also to get profit where we can then pay pay some of the debt that we have, manage these disasters that are happening. We can manage maybe this conflict and the wars that is taking place, be able to rebuild roads, schools, and so on. But these ideas being challenged in many ways. The so-called powerful institutions, powerful countries, powerful individuals found a way to refuse these things to take place. It has become like a battle. But you see, the same powerful countries, when they sell their product, they sell it quite expensive. It's like what you see, the coffee coming from Kenya is produced somewhere in Europe and then sold back to Kenya at almost 10 times higher price than how it was sold. Look at this. You see how the world functions? This is how the world functions, day in, day out. And anybody who tries to oppose this idea, let's say if this president or a minister is from a poor country, like I said, a conflict will start somewhere to remove that person in power. That person will be assassinated, or they will block that country from doing business with other countries. There are countries in Africa forced to use currency that is not their own. And in order to use this currency, you have to pay millions and billions of money. If they say they want to use their own currency, there will be movement, and the movement that will make sure this country will not have a chance to make its own currency. Or if it manages to do that, the currency value will be dropped to a certain level, because countries will abandon that country and make sure that they speak with other countries that they get along with. Together, they will move away from that country and make sure that country become very poor. We're seeing it particularly with I think we saw it with Zimbabwe at time when Mugabe spoke about taking the land and all this and that. You have seen conflict that have been forgotten where people don't want to talk about. I remember seeing a country like the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, that has been in conflict, in wars for many years, was under embargo not to buy any guns, weapons, and all this. And many reasons will be put in place. Beautiful reason, don't take me wrong. Country will gather in the UN. One country will start this idea. We force it to the position where that country or that government will not be allowed to buy military equipment to defend itself. Why? Because that conflict is again for the same people who can provide a solution to this conflict. What do you expect? These are some of the biggest reasons why people leave their country. Countries that are going under through difficulties such as the ones that I just mentioned. I don't want to carry on giving you many reasons, but within these few reasons I just given you, I'm sure you already have an idea that no country can stand on its knee. And we are talking about here after here. You can see the resilience of many people within these countries. And one of the reasons why people are deciding to put their lives on a rope, even if they know that they can end up dying on the journey that they are taking, it's not because this country are poor or because these people are poor. Look, economic poverty has been there since life started. Even so-called developed countries, they experience poverty. Go in different areas of the countries, to be amazed how many people are struggling to put just the food on the table. So the lack of food or the lack of money to go on day after day is not mainly the reason why somebody leave the country and go somewhere else. You have indigenous people who live in a very small area in the forest somewhere. They go on with their lives. And sometimes we, the helpers, have tried to go there and help them. But you know what? Some of these communities refuse. Why? Because in the name of help and in the name of aid, we often destroy other nations. And this is the reason why these groups try as much as they can to stay away from us. We are not good for them. We can probably destroy them. And there are those that have been forced to actually give up their land and to be placed within the cities or the countries where they end up struggling a lot. These are the problems that anyone who's going under it will be forced to go somewhere else. Just like I said, human being, we are always seeking for opportunity. We are always seeking for better ways within ourselves. If this was not the case, the so-called Americans today would not be called Americans. If this was not not the case. Australia would still belong to native Australia. Europe was never enough for many Americans today. Europe was never enough for many Australia, for many people in South Africa, and for many people who have moved in many different parts of the world. So you can see how people have moved, where some group have used their force to take over by force, and this will be seen as a nice thing. They took over. But now a small group of people who are moving, it becomes one of the largest problems around the world. Remember what I said, sometimes what you see as a problem may not be a problem, or what is a solution might not be a solution. It just depends on how you are looking at something. One may choose to ignore the truth, the other may know the truth and choose to ignore it. Somebody else might not know the truth, and somebody else may know what they are doing is wrong, but they don't want to know the truth. So it just depends on how you just want to present it. This idea of if we are doing it, it's okay. If it's them doing it, it's bad. That's why you see in today's world, some countries finding it difficult to get support from the other countries within the world. Why? Because some wars, some killing, some rape, some terrorism are justifiable. The other are not. You look at the wars in Russia and Ukraine, Hamas versus Israel, Syria, you name it, you come to understand that all these conflicts are looked differently based on this idea of interest. So if you are somebody who was in a country as such as this country I just mentioned, can you still stay in that country, remain there, or will you say, you know what, I got nothing to lose, I have to go somewhere else? The people who you seeing in your country today, the people you are seeing in the channels, the people you are seeing traveling in massive groups, the people who are dying on the borders and in deserts, they are not running away from poverty alone or one particular problem. They are running away from loss of hope. These are the people who have lost the hope. It's not because of just the poverty or money or whatever. It's that there is no hope where they're coming from. And where they see hope is where they're going. And if you were in their shoes, you would probably do almost what they are doing right now. Just like I said, we all seek for better life. And like I said, these movements of people was not one of the biggest problem in our world. But it is now, because it is now on our doors. Developed countries, powerful countries, the migrants and the so-called illegal migrant are now on our doors. They are now our problem. And that's why perhaps this is now a problem. Yes, the so-called illegal migrants, many of them are dying, but the way we portray certain things can make a problem worse. The media portray this idea of migration to the point where the idea of so-called illegal migrants swallow the entire beauty that comes with the story of migration. And even though I said that people who are giving their life to cross the channel and many other ways have lost hope, this is the reason why they are migrating and putting their life in danger to die, because they have lost hope. This does not give you, the person who is thinking to put your life in danger to leave the loved ones behind, this does not justify your action. I'm just giving an image of fact that exists. But your life is worth than all of this, because many of us were born in poverty. If you are moving because of the poverty or because you don't have the exact things that you want to have, but life goes on. There's always other ways to go on with our lives. We just need to continue fighting, coming together, work together. Don't continue to break the communities. Your life, once it's gone, nothing else matters. Even the American dream that you are chasing, you may not see it or enjoy it. So you have to think about these things. There are many who are not just dying, who get to the country where they are going, but don't enjoy lives there. They end up going through a lot and never have perhaps an opportunity to be granted some of these status I mentioned earlier. Now you see the problems. Now you understand why we have so many migrants around the world and so-called illegal migrants, or the migrants that you see to be poor people, to be from low level. They cannot come in many other forms if they are not being pushed away from their countries because of these problems. Their governments are unable to even create jobs. because jobs have been taken somewhere else. When sometimes powerful companies come to do business or operate in their countries, they pay their employee very low wages. Many of these powerful institutions or organizations and businesses, they will pay very low tax. Some of them don't even want to pay tax, which means the country are not benefiting. Think now you understand some of these problems and look at them in a way that I am looking at them in this sense, because these are the facts that we don't discuss. These are some of the biggest problems why people are on the border of your country, are dying in the channel. Some of these people were teachers, were doctors, had better lives in their countries, but because of some of these circumstances, they will be forced to leave their country. Now it is a wonderful time for me to provide you with the solutions that answer the question of this topic, and then we summarize. So what are the best solutions for migrations and the so-called illegal migrations that we see in developed countries today? In a simple term, is to change the way we do things, is to change the way we think. And particularly the powerful countries, the powerful institutions, the powerful individual with money, the developed countries have to change the way they look countries that they refer as poor countries in many ways, whether this is how they do business, how they force them to use their currency, how they give them endless debt that they have to continue paying. It's just changing the way we do things. Stop creating conflict, do business as again with these countries. And this idea of man-made climate change, this can be a shared responsibility like some of these countries have already had. Give them back something because they are suffering from what they don't cause. When you are making millions of money and billions, they gain nothing from it. Only thing they gain is disasters in their countries. So find a way to work with these countries as a partner, not as a helper. They don't need help. You have helped them for many years. You have provided aid to them for many years. But that is not what is needed in these countries. What is needed is working in an honest way. Working just the way you work with other partners or other powerful countries you do business with. This idea to force the government to accept things that they shouldn't. This idea of forcing people to choose these countries or these countries. If you are not with China, you should be with Russia, or if you are not with Russia, you should be with, the Western countries or these different blocks. All these create problems for these countries and does not help them. And anyone who wishes to see these countries stand on their knees knows these are some of the biggest problems that create many problems. And these are the solutions to help solve the problems of the so-called illegal or many migration movements that we see, or the poverty that we see around the world, and many other problems that we see in the world, is to stay away of this greedy, this idea of we are the valuable one, we are the one who should stay on top, while the other can continue to struggle and to save us. This idea of master verse, cause many of these problems. And in working together this way, we restore hope within these countries. They will not become rich countries in 3 days, but they will have hope. These young men and the women who are putting their life in danger to go to the other side of the world, if there is hope in their country, knowing that they can go to school and one day they will have an opportunity to have a job, they will have hope to stay in their countries, because they know one day they can get a job, they will become a teacher, they will become somebody in their countries. It will not be worth it to put their life in danger to go die in the ocean, hoping for the unknown. And I'm sure we can be part of this hope. Only problem that is there is when we do not want these other countries to do better. We just want to be the one to be on top. So you, as an individual person who's listening to me, who is located in a rich country, a powerful country, you have to start looking at things differently. You have to look at people differently. Our worth does not come because we are very smart people, or because we work very hard, or because we have all these resources. There are many people who are dying and struggling for the sake of the resources that we enjoy day in, day out. The laptops that you are swapping around, the phones that you are throwing one to the other, There are people who are being raped day in, day out, several times. There are people who are being killed because of all these resources. So we are not rich like you think, and those countries are not poor like what they tell us them to be. Close our eyes to receive resources and minerals that we know people are being raped and killed day in, day out because of it. All these things I mentioned are the responsibility for all of us, and particularly us in developed countries. We can do better, and until we change this way of doing, we continue to see illegal migrants, hop migrants, and other names that we can give them. They will still continue to come, because it's just like all of us, if where we are there's no hope, there's no jobs, our medical or other institutions are not functioning well, we go somewhere else. So migration and the so-called illegal migrations is not a problem, but it is the outcome of the problem that is hidden, that the world don't want to look at or don't want to see. The problem is what is happening to where these people are coming from. And if we are to provide the solution, just like I said, we have to go to these countries and do what I just mentioned. Sending migrants to a different country will not solve the problem, because these people can go there, and if they don't appreciate life there, they will end up going somewhere else. This is something that we do as a human being. I've already repeated this many times, and you know it. We all want a better life, or some people want to be left alone. If they are poor, leave them with their poverty, but don't take what they already have. We can change the world in changing to these ways, and we know it. Even those who see migration, illegal migration, as a problem, they know these are some of the biggest cause of why many people are knocking on the doors of their countries today. Even if they are now closing the doors, they don't want to take the responsibility, share the responsibility. Let's summarize this. In summary, I gave an explanation about different types of migration. Who is a migrant? Who is a refugee? An asylum seeker? I talked about why people move from one place to the other, and when this movement started is an historical one. People have always moved from one place to another, and there's a lot of beautiful things when people move around. Our world is connected in one place, and we are doing better because we have become so connected, one country to the other. We can be the problem for others, while on the other hand, we can be the solution for others. We have seen how a problem in one place can become a problem in another country. I spoke about the idea of COVID. No one thought COVID would be a world pandemic. When it was in China, this idea of migration, again, is something similar, that people are struggling somewhere, people are forced to leave their countries, and they end up somewhere else. The outcome is now in developed countries. The idea of climate change, where the biggest contributor of pollutions and many other things that create or is part of the cause of this climate change, is mostly caused by industries run by so-called developed countries. But the outcome, which is the problems, the result of it being affecting the so-called non-developed countries. I also demonstrated how powerful countries, developed countries, some of the most respected institutions in the world, powerful individuals contribute to the poverty that takes place in many countries around the world because of their gain. They close their eyes and they don't want to see the problems. They choose not to talk about that. They pretend to talk about it, look at the other side, or provide different solutions. Let's send people in a different country. Let's close our border while they continue to be part of the problem. For the solutions, I said, we can do better in turning the clock the other way around from what is happening, allowing these countries to run their institutions, whether they want to apply democracy in their country or not, support them, work with them. They don't need help such as aid. They need to be looked as partners. That's what they mean asking for. They are partners just like any other partner. Do business with them again in that way. Give this country hope to stand for these people who are putting their lives in danger to remain in their countries. And instead of investing money in the channels or on the borders to try to stop these people, or to the countries where people are taking boats and other forms of transportation, you could invest this money within those countries. Provide the jobs for the young people. It will keep them there. You know where the majority of these people coming from. So investing in those countries can change the lives of those who are earning living. The so-called illegal migrants, they also have the responsibility to not put their life in danger because of certain ways of life. They have to also understand that poverty is not permanent. This is something that can be overturned. Hoping and trying to work hard. Yes, I know you have lost hope, but never lose hope. Always continue to try to come together. You have to come together because that is another problem that is there. Government within these so-called poor countries, politicians and powerful people in those countries have also the responsibility because they are the ones who also want to continue to be in power, who also continue to take all the resources of their countries and give away so that they can continue to get what they get. These selfish people should also change their attitude. If you've already been a president for your turn, you should also leave somebody else to lead the country. That country doesn't belong to you alone. And don't think without you, that country will not continue. What about when you die? Is your ghost going to continue running that country? The answer is no. You have to give other people an opportunity. Stand behind, pass your experience with the rest of the people, with the youths, to also take the country forward while you can also enjoy your retirement. So we can stop the boats, we can stop the movement of many migrations by doing better. This will be able to provide us with the solutions that we all need. Yes, the fear is always that, if they do better, then we are losing. If that's the case, then you should stop complaining about migrants coming to take our jobs or this and that, because until this change is in place, this movement will continue to be. We can restore hope in these countries, which will allow us to solve this problem of migration. And when the people move, they will move because it is a beautiful thing to do. They will move as legal migrants. They will move in a way that will benefit the country where they are migrating to and the country where they are emigrated from. Enough of talking. I hope you got some understanding within this topic about the so-called illegal migrant and the migrations, and I hope that the solutions provided, you think about them and come to some form of thoughts about what you can do or how you can contribute to this so-called one of the biggest problem in our world. So I hope you continue to learn. I hope you enjoy this podcast. And if you do, follow us on the different social platforms. Andunda Tree on Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook. And you can also visit our website, which is andundatree.com or www.andundatree.com. And you should be able to get in touch, to engage with us, and to support us in one way or another. So until next time, one love.